So if you think globalization is good, you'll be over this side. And if you want to be on the team to argue that globalization is not good, you'll be over this side.
We are in the position that globalization is a good thing. If we didn't have globalization, we'd probably be still stuck in the Stone Age. We'd still be using Blackberries. Highest definition on video would be 1280 by 720. And probably VR would still be years in the future. Where you have the right company is able to allocate the resources to make the right product, everybody is going to benefit. It would be safe to say that generally we are better off.
So I think even though globalization has been successful, and it is successful in theory, that these new challenges that we're facing in the developed world mean that we need to change the approach that we have. So we need to recognize that certain countries, if we trade with them, then they're going to become more of a threat in the future. So we should change that system to preference trade and investment and education and information flows with trusted partners. And more often than not, those are other democracies or developing countries that want to show a commitment to moving towards democratic rule of law systems, and that are likely to be allies in the future. And I think through that new model, we will make a freer, better system that will eventually bring all the other countries into it.
We shouldn't really have shortages of microchips because Silicon Valley is like the birthplace of it. It's a little. I think relying on globalization too much is kind of an issue.
But again, we have to consider, how do we even get microchips in the first place? How do we manufacture them? You know, if we are talking about silicon, China has the most silicon. It's the country with the most silicon than any country in the world. So it is a relevant country to do business with as far as that is concerned. You know, if we want to be making microchips, not to say that, you know, United States might not be able to produce as much microchips as it needs, but then we have to also recognize the fact that there are countries that have a comparative advantage in certain things, and then it will be just smart or beneficial for the United States to take advantage of that. Companies in the United States led by a lot of like Indian CEOs, you know, so that is all a product of globalization, you know. So that's ideas moving, that's technology moving, and much more important, that's talent and people moving.
Yes, the chip shortage you mentioned, LK. So most of the chips come from Taiwan through the TSMC company, is the leader in semiconductor chip manufacturing. People's Republic of China is threatening them on a daily basis that they're going to invade them and take over that country. So now it looks like the United States is going to fund semiconductor production at home in the United States, just in case that Taiwan falls to China, because then those semiconductors will just be cut off from the United States and the allies. So these are the kind of decisions that are now having to be made based on the supply chain risk from countries that may not be able to provide that product in the future.
What are the rules that China is breaking, and is it possible for to be on good terms with the United States and all of its allies? Is it just always is it going to lead to conflict just like with Russia?
The whole system in China has moved towards a much more controlling, repressive system. And now they've got a president who has changed the constitution to allow him to be in power for the rest of his life. Whereas before, in China, the leaders had 2 5-year terms. So that happened. And then also the Chinese state are putting in a system of monitoring and control of the population in their digital infrastructure. So I don't know if you've heard of the social credit system. So there's a system that's been piloted and now apparently is running out throughout the whole country. People are no longer incentivized to speak freely. They have to consider what the state will think of that speech or behavior. The question is, I mean, who makes the rules? Who decides what is a good person, what is a bad person? How can we collaborate freely with cultures that are so restricted by their own government. The more rational way of global collaboration is between free people that can freely share information, knowledge, education, research into technology that are free to do that without being restricted by the state. So I think that's where we may look towards some sort of alliance of democracies, or recognizing that a democratic partner is a better partner because they're more trusted and the people can speak freely.
And we can look at Libya, for example, what happened there, you know, with the case of Gaddafi. You know, I mean, interfering in that country, we can all agree that didn't lead to a better society in Libya. You know, like we can't compare Libya as it is today to Libya as it was when Gaddafi was there. Certainly, it was much better. Like that is very obvious. You know. So now, what do we say? Do we take the burden of responsibility? You know, as a nation in the United States, do we say that okay, they were not democratic? All right, we have interfered and we have done so and so. Well, it didn't work. Now, are we gonna take? But no, what did we do? You know, we did just exit it.
After you talk about the colour revolution, the democratic revolution, what happened there after Gaddafi?
It's been disastrous. Since then, the country has been going backwards. That's what happened, you know. And so, not to say that, you know, if he was still there, this wouldn't happen. Of course, it's a social experiment. Unless it happened, we can never tell. But what we can say, basically, what we can say for fact is that it was much better then than it is now. And this time that we have spent, you know, working as democratic governments around the world is a very small amount of time. You know, what do we say in the next 100 to 200 or 300 years? Who knows? You know, what turns out to be the best form of government that works for people. So I say that with caution that yes, it is the best that we have so far. However, you know, we have to also do that with some caution and with some level of tolerance and with some level of, you know, acceptance of other things that other people might want to go with.
Okay, I was just gonna say, honestly, I feel like globalization. I don't know if you all agree with this, even on this side. It's a shut and close case. Like globalization is gonna be the future anyway. However, I think the issue that I think we have here and some other people have with it is that there's I think we have some biases based on our experience with globalization. So I have like uncles and aunties who are like from Detroit, Michigan, and they used to make like $50 an hour back in the 70s. You know, pensions went away, all the factories shut down. So I think that's more of my concern with globalization. Some of the things that we miss out, specifically in the United States. I hate to make it centered, but that's really my concern with globalization. Some of the things that we miss out on and how it has affected some people's lives in certain parts of our country.
And you know, there's an argument that that's what allowed Trump to come into power. That there was a lot of dissatisfaction with this outsourcing of the manufacturing jobs. Do you have a view on that? Whether that was one of the drivers for the Trump administration winning power?
I 100% think that. Because I know Ohio, we voted Trump like 60 to 40%. So it was a landslide victory.
When we talk about something like if there is a good economy like globalization is all the time is going to make it cheaper to community even if they are not directly connected. For instance, Facebook research is all the time completely developing about the machine learning, and they are creating a lot more AI that's sufficient enough that replaces the human labor, and at the end the most of the products is going to be a lot more free and almost free, I mean, yeah, and cheaper to community.
The one thing that hasn't really spread very well through globalization is differences in culture, just how, you know, different people have developed around the world to think about things differently, especially when it comes to ideas that these other countries just do not accept. And it's starting to create a lot of tension between our countries. In order for globalization to work, we need to not just be moving around people and objects and research and stuff. We also need to be, you know, moving around culture and knowledge about how our fellow man thinks, or it could end up creating more division than it would unity.
Currently, like with the pandemic going on, like we had supply shortages in the United States of face masks. Like that's something that should have, shouldn't happen. We had to rely on China for face masks. And then with our vaccine, I mean, we're trying to get these vaccines to so many countries around the world. I think if we are less dependent on globalization, um, and the supply chain issues that come with it, it may help individual countries respond to crisis like the pandemic and other crises that we see today. But also, the last point I was really going to make with this is that, like with globalization, I think the main problem stems from like corporations using it to get cheaper labor. Like, especially in the United States, a lot of our products are made from other countries because the labor is so cheap. Like the iPhone, like they have like Foxconn. If anybody knows Foxconn, like factories or whatever, they work like 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's ridiculous. And so we can get cheaper products. I'll pay more for iPhone if I know slave labor is not a part of it, personally.
As far as culture is concerned, though, yes, it will be difficult for people to move together if they have different set of values, and then you have to put them in one place and then they have to move together. Or we can look at it as, oh, we have different cultures, so we can take the best of each of these cultures and try to work together as much as we can. We can take advantage of those differences, because those differences do bring about a lot of great things. That's difference in ideas, that's different in perspective, that's difference in experience. Because now, if you want to solve problems for the world, because any product that you're going to build, any business that you're going to build, you hopefully want that it won't just serve your community or your country, but eventually it can serve the entire world. Because using the resources that we have today, we know that that's very possible. And how else can you do that if you can't really interact and understand how each of these cultures in their individual ways work?